We echo there. Okay, welcome to Falkirk Council Scrutiny Committee. 17th of March, 10 AM. Purpose of scrutiny really is about checks and balances. We're just trying to sort the sound out. There's a wee bit of feedback. We'll try again. There it goes. Try again. That sounds much better. Okay, so welcome to the Scrutiny Committee. Tuesday, 17th of March. The purpose of scrutiny is about checks and balances. Decisions are taken at Executive and Council, and as a result, policies are implemented. So the Scrutiny Committee is really to look at what's been implemented and make sure it's everything's okay. So we probe and scrutinise and ask questions about whatever's came from Executive or Council. So do we have any apologies?
We do, Convener. We've got apologies from Councillors Anslow, Benny, Patrick, Robertson and Councillor Claire Mackey-Brown.
Okay. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Members should declare any financial and non-financial interests they may have in any item of business at this meeting, identifying the relevant agenda item and the nature of the interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? No. Agenda item 3, minute of the meeting of the Scrutiny Committee held on 17th of February, pages 3 to 13. Can we agree the minute?
Agreed.
Thank you. Any matters arising from that minute? No. Agenda item 4, rolling action log. We'll go to Mr. Perry for that.
Thanks, Convener. This is just the traditional rolling action log that sets out any actions that the committee have asked for, reports to come to the committee. You'll see there's a number, all of them are in progress and expected to be submitted by the expected reporting date.
Thank you. So we're now moving on to the committee business. Agenda item 5, Falkirk Futures Employability Strategy Report. It's pages 17 to 75 in your agenda papers, and I think we're going to Mr. Watson for that. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to brief committee this morning. Today I'm going to provide a short overview of Falkirk Futures, our employability strategy, which is designed to ensure that every young person in Falkirk reaches the right destination at the right time. With recent figures showing that 97.5% of young people leave school and progress into a positive destination, there's a lot of hugely positive work going on within Falkirk high schools and primary schools as well, and ELCs, supported by strong partnership work. And the aim of the strategy is to build on this very strong foundation. Whilst Falkirk performs very well nationally in this area, we know that some young people still face challenges with respect to maintaining and sustaining destinations and positive pathways. The strategy aims to reduce the impact of barriers by ensuring the right blend of support and opportunity is available at the right time. The strategy sets out clear focus areas which provide clarity on the support and how we will support the young people through their transitions at every stage of their school career until exit point, by expanding the curricular offer, strengthening intervention, enhancing partnership working, tightening governance and empowering learners. Together, these areas set out how schools, services and partners will align their efforts. The delivery of the strategy is phased over 3 stages: foundation, review and scale, and embedment, so that improvements can be tested, expanded and sustained over time. Ultimately, the aim of the strategy is simple: to strengthen pathways into post-school opportunities, provide the support that underpins young people's ability to engage, to equip young people with the skills they need for a changing world, and to ensure that every learner, regardless of their background, can progress confidently into adulthood. I'm obviously happy to expand on any part of the strategy and welcome any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Watson. I've got a question. Page 19, 3.9. I wonder if you'd say a bit about kids that don't reach positive destinations, you know, like how do we support them?
Yeah, so there's a lot of work goes into that. Now, post-school, so when the kids get to the end of their school career, there's a lot of partnership work that has to take place in order to support these young people. So the schools have all got a careers advisor who works in the school, and they're aware of any young person that's not moved into a positive destination. And the plan thereafter is that they would pick the young people up through their post-school team, and they would support them into different opportunities. Now, that's the kind of traditional process. However, the schools have such relationships with the young people and families. It tends to be the most vulnerable or hardest to reach young people who don't progress into a positive destination. And the schools have got various different kind of supports and relationships with these families and young people to try and continue to support them. So, for instance, there was an example this week where a couple of young people had fallen out of destination and the information had gone back to the school, and they then feed that back into Skills Development Scotland to make sure these young people are picked up. So there's very few that drop out. There are some young people that can become unknown. So if nobody's aware of where they've gone, but the LEP have recently commissioned a piece of work with Go Youth Trust, and they work to make sure they identify where these young people are. Sometimes the unknown young people can be in a positive destination, we just don't know about it. But Go Youth Trust will go out, visit the family home, try and gather as much information as possible to make sure that we know exactly where the young people are. And if they're not in a positive destination, they would feed them back into Skills Development Scotland to make sure they're picked up with the after school team. So there are strong systems in place to make sure that no young person's left out, left behind. But that's very much based on the strength of relationship between the schools and our partners and our post-school partners as well.
Okay, thank you very much for that concise answer. We will now go to Councillor McCabe.
Thank you, Provost. Thank you, Mr. Watson. I don't know if you may have answered part of my question, but I'm looking at page 28. There's a wee table here, barriers to positive destinations. I've had a very non-scientific look through it, and I can identify that there are certain things where the council can have an input, you know, education can have an input into it, but I'm looking at things like mental and physical health, including disability. I don't know if we can affect that as much. Substance misuse, that's a personal thing. Barriers linked to previous involvement with the justice system, low levels of attainment. Those almost seem distant from what we can do. Could you maybe just explain a wee bit about how we would maybe overcome those? As I say, the others, you know, language barriers, housing instability, we can have an input in them. I recognise that, but it's just those other barriers. How can we try and niggle into them?
I think the schools are becoming ever more aware of the challenges that some of the societal challenges that young people face. And part of that is through the school's approach to supporting young people. Things like mental health challenges can have a significant impact, and it is impacting on attendance at school. We obviously use services such as CAMS to try and support with that, which has challenges as well, but the schools have all got counselling services that are available, so young people are able to access those. There's significant work goes on in things like social education in schools as well, to try and support young people to overcome some of these barriers. And what we also do is we commission support services as well within schools. So, for example, organisations such as Serenians will work with some of our hardest to reach families. So whilst we don't always have an ability to directly influence some of these challenges, what we can do is to try and mitigate them as best as possible. And I think the schools are doing a really good job, and that's evidenced within the data that comes out. We can't remove every barrier, but our kind of role in education is to try and mitigate them as much as we can. We've obviously got the schools utilise their resources through PEF and the SAFE budget and things like that as well, whereby they'll run programmes or support programmes to try and best support young people to attain, first and foremost, the best that they can, which puts them in the best position to then progress into a positive destination. So yeah, there's lots of work that goes on. A lot of it needs resourcing, and that is one of the challenges, I suppose, is to provide as many of these services as possible requires a significant resourcing to try and mitigate them as far as possible. But I think the schools are doing an excellent job with what's available.
Can I just bring Miss McIntyre in? I think she's wanting to add to that.
Yeah, thank you. It was just to say that we have a test to change underway that's funded through the Whole Family Wellbeing Fund. So it's called the Family Firm, and it works with the most disengaged and hard to reach young people who are care experienced, and it works with corporate parents and different organisations within that to provide opportunities for our young people. So they will provide very individualised, one-to-one intensive support for young people. So that might be a lot of coaching and one-to-one over a period of time. And then when the young person has got the confidence to try other things, then some taster opportunities can be provided, for example, in a care home or in a different setting. So that's a 2-year test to change. We're just about 1 year into it, working with at the moment about 13 care experienced young people and having really positive results. So it was just to say that that's another area of work we have ongoing at the moment.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll go back to Councillor McCabe.
I just want to acknowledge the response from both Provost. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor McCabe. Councillor Forrest.
Thank you, Convener. And thanks for your clarification of these things. Page 50, Appendix 3, the Council's AVIL percentage measure for 2025.
Councillor Forrest, could I just pause you there, if you don't mind, because Councillor Kelly had a follow-up question. I should have went to him first, if that's okay.
No, carry on.
Thank you, Provost. Morning. What are the current positive destination attainment and participation gaps for young people from the most deprived areas by comparison with the least deprived in Falkirk? And what reductions is the strategy aiming to achieve, and by when?
So there is a gap of about 3.7% between the least deprived and the most deprived in terms of their destination pathways. We are obviously aware of that gap, and that is something we're trying to mitigate. The strategy is a 5-year strategy, 3 to 5 year strategy. And at the moment we're in a kind of foundation stage where we're doing things like test to change, we're introducing new curricular opportunities, and we're looking at the support systems that are in place for the young people, particularly with a focus on our most deprived. We have recently commenced a strategic partnership with a local employer, and that's supporting young people in Grangemouth High School, which again has got a lens on our most deprived young people. And part of that is to try and mitigate some of the challenges that young people from more deprived areas face compared to those in the least deprived areas. For example, The company have spoken about flexible working patterns when they first start, because what we find is young people can lack the resilience when they go into employment. There's discussions around supporting transport to and from the workplace, and also providing financial support initially for things like uniform and appropriate dress and things like that, that young people maybe would feel that would impact on their ability to engage. So there's a really strong eye on that. The family firm as well, we're now starting to work with them as well in terms of looking at young people that need increased support. And we've got organisations such as Go Youth Trust, Serenians and other organisations that are picking up the most vulnerable young people and trying to make sure they're best supported. Have to say as well, the schools are doing an awful lot in this area as well. They're very aware of the demographic. They're very aware of the young people that need the most support, and they're running a lot of programmes post-school for young people that build resilience and skills that allow them to access. So rather than just allowing them to leave school, they're putting things in place that develop the young people as best they can to provide them with an exit point that allows them to progress into something more positive. So that's a huge part of the work that we're doing.
We'll just bring Mr. Reid in at this point.
Thank you. And just to add to that, the Falkirk gap is below the national gap. So I think that's important to know. That's detailed in paragraph 3.7. And we're going to provide further data on exactly that through our CEF paper and our destinations paper, which will come to scrutiny in April and May as well. So there'll be more robust analysis of that data for you to look into. But I think, just to add to what Murray said, the most important thing is about developing an idea of where young people want to go as early as possible. And so it isn't just secondary schools that are involved in this. There's whole programmes of developing the young workforce, different initiatives and events that take place throughout primary so that young people start to get exposed to what possibilities are. And it's also important to make sure that there's early intervention with young people and families where we know we may have to break cycles of, lots of family members not working, and to let the young people see what might be possible. So it's absolutely about developing and supporting that work ethic throughout primary and secondary as well.
That sounds very positive, the whole thing, very positive. And especially what you're saying there, John, about breaking the cycle. That's a really, really hard bit. And it's what causes more probably alcohol problems, drug problems, and that they just get stuck in these cycles of deprivation. Anyway, thanks for that. Which groups of young people, for example, ASN and that, have interventions in place? How will the strategy track the quality of the destinations under employment, 0-hour contracts, low pay, rather than just sort of headline positive destinations?
So that's a big part of what we're looking at just now. Our initial destinations are very strong. We know we need to do more to sustain the destination profile of young people. So we're working with SDS in terms of making sure schools are aware of the data in terms of young people, and identifying cohorts that are most likely to maybe drop off. And we're trying to make sure that those young people are given additional support. And the key thing is to try and be ambitious as well for the young people, and show ambition for them to move into the right destination. And that's a big part of the strategy as well, is to try and get young people into the right destination at the right time. So we are looking at that data. Again, we don't control a lot once they leave school, but what we view as our role is to make sure the building blocks are in place and give them the best opportunity and have the best services around them, to build up the kind of resilience, and as you said, John said yourself, about breaking those cycles as well. So we are looking longer term. There's two measures. There's the SLDR, which is the school leaver destination report that comes out when the young people leave school, and that's a snapshot of one day. And the annual participation measure is taken over 6 months of a year from 16 to 19-year-olds. So we're now cognisant of both of those figures, and we're making sure we're working towards narrowing the gap between young people's initial destination and that kind of longer term aspect as well.
Thanks again. Do you have a lot of contact with the colleges, with children that's, you know, struggling with academic positions, whereas the you know, hands-on, they're great? What sort of relationship do you have, John?
Thanks, Councillor Kelly. We have a very robust school-college partnership in Forth Valley. We always have done, and we're just further strengthening that through the formation of a strategic advisory board, which is going to be made up of colleagues from education, from the college, and from the wider industrial sector, to make sure that what that partnership is delivering is what the future workforce of Falkirk actually requires, and influencing the curriculum that we're delivering in schools as well as in college. So we have several hundred young people who on a weekly basis attend school-college partnership courses as part of their planned curriculum. And the idea of some of those courses is to make sure that young people are experiencing further education at an earlier stage, so they get used to it. So when they come to school leaving age, they can just seamlessly move into that. And what that does, it improves the transition experience for them, but it also lifts their learning to a higher level, and it allows them to develop skills which will help get them into a higher quality destination, which hopefully in the long run will be prosperous for them economically in terms of their outcomes. Mm-hmm. So all of that is very robustly supported within Falkirk and across Forth Valley.
That sounds really positive. Just what I wanted to hear. Thanks very much, guys.
Thanks, Councillor Kelly. We'll now go to Councillor Forrest.
Thank you. On page 50, Appendix 3 shows the annual participation measure for 2025, and it ranges from 91.3 up to 97.5. We're in there at 92.8, which is just below the national average. But most of the, sorry, not most, but there are a number of other authorities, mainly rural ones such as Shetland, Ailensar, the Scottish Border and Highland, which are above us. It might be useful for us to see a comparison with local authorities more akin to ourselves, because as Mr. Reid has just mentioned, we've got a different strategy here, where there are young people who are going to college, etc. And these sort of things might not be quite as needed in the rural areas. So that's just an observation. Have you got any plans for that?
Thank you, Councillors. Just to clarify, the two different measures, one of which schools directly have control over is the school leavers destination return, and the snapshot of that's taken in October. And then there's a follow-up to SLDR, which is taken in February. And between the initial snapshot and the follow-up snapshot, there's a lot of work that goes on. And if young people fall out of a destination, even although they have left school, staff in schools will try to get them back into another destination. And then there's this measure, the annual participation measure, which includes young people up to the age of 19, which is more difficult for education in schools to influence directly, although we would like to think that we plan curriculums and provide the right support so that they move into a sustained destination. But there's a whole range of other partners and agencies that have a part to play here, like the Learning and Employability Service, formerly ETU, SDS, other partners that Murray's already mentioned, like Go Youth Trust and so on. So the measures show different things, but we're not happy with where we are sitting in the APM, and it is our intention that the strategy would support the longer term outcomes for that to move back up.
Okay. Yeah, just to add to that, obviously we do look outwards to other local authorities. So we met with Shetland recently, I think back in February time, and they spoke to us about their approach to getting positive destinations. It's very different there because the numbers there are significantly lower, and there's a lot of more of a personal relationship with some of the young people that fall out of the system. But we are very open to looking outwards and finding good practice from elsewhere. We're going down to East Ayrshire for a visit in May to look at a post-school kind of programme that they've got set up. I've met with South Lanarkshire Council as well, with a kind of similar demographic to Falkirk, and spoken to them. There are different ways that some of the training opportunities are set up within councils. So the way that our training programme, our ETU, our post-school training opportunities is set up differently to South Lanarkshire, but there is learning that we can take from that as well. And we are aware of Stirling. Our SDS lead looks after Stirling as well, so we can take some good practice from Stirling. Whilst it is a different demographic, it is close by, and there's learning we can take from that as well. So we are looking at all of these different areas to try and take some of the practice and shape it into what we do here as well. So we're very much doing that.
Which is exactly why I was asking, so we could get a more comparable thing. Thanks for that. There are many parts of the implementation roadmap in relation to Pillar 5, equity and empowerment for learners. Of learners. But there are no implementation dates to show what the intended progress of the roadmap is. Can you maybe clarify that?
Yeah, it is a 3 to 5 year roadmap. So the initial this year and next year will be very much on creating the foundations for the strategy to then develop from. We are testing change in a number of different areas. We've got a foundation apprenticeship in early learning and childcare that will be offered as of June this year. And the idea behind that is to look at us centrally offering a foundation apprenticeship that young people can access from school, and see if we can expand that menu. So we're starting with early learning and childcare, but we might try and expand into other areas such as construction and other areas which directly offer opportunity for young people in the local area to progress into positive destinations. So that's part of, we're trying to get the foundations right just now. We've done a lot in terms of the governance of our work. So making sure that we've got service level agreements with different partners that we're working with, and that we can measure progress on an ongoing basis to see what's working and what's not working. So that's where we are just now. But over the piece, it's a kind of 3 to 5 year plan, which will see us get to the point where hopefully these foundations that we're putting in place just now, we can start to scale up and develop further and expand as we go forward. But we need to make sure that we've got the building blocks in place to then build and develop from there.
Okay. No hard and fast dates, but 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, then. Thank you very much. Thank you both.
Thanks, Councillor Forrest. We'll now go to Councillor McCabe.
Thank you, Provost. It's just to pick on something Mr. Reid said there. I'm looking at 2 pages, page 44 and page 53. From page 44, I can identify there's a drop-off. It's almost 10-12% between ages. You see this between 19-year-olds, 18-year-olds, 17-year-olds and 16-year-olds. They appear to be dropping off. And then on page 53, where both 19 and 18-year-olds represent 47% of the two age groups, and make up 3/4 of the total unemployed seeking group. I was curious, John, to find out, as Director of Education, are you still involved in that cohort, if you like? Obviously you are. Could you just expand a wee bit on the measures that you do to try and engage these people, pull them back in? Because obviously at 18, 19 years of age, they're really critical for workforce.
Certainly, I think the first almost longer term part in this is to make sure that we are identifying the right destinations for young people when they are still at school, and making sure that our curriculum and the support around those young people is appropriate, so that we're not going to see such a drop-off from the SLDR to the annual participation measure. But that's where our other partners come in. So like Skills Development Scotland, like the partnership we've got with Forth Valley College, like the Local Employability Partnership, like all the other third sector agencies and partners that we're working with in school time that can also provide continued support as young people get older. And obviously key to this is the Council's Learning and Employability Unit, the ETU, Learning and Employability Service, the ETU. So we are involved, we're represented on the groups, we influence the strategic direction of what needs to take place with our partners, but we're not obviously directly responsible for the delivery of the programmes at that age. I'll maybe ask Murray if he wants to add anything to that answer.
Yeah, there is a different cohort as well. So when the SLDR reports directly on young people who leave school, the annual participation measure reports on every young person from 16 to 19. So you bring in young people that possibly didn't go to school in Falkirk. So anybody that moves into the area becomes part of that statistic. So the APM is more difficult for us to shift in terms of having the overall control over the young people within that cohort. However, as John alluded to there as well, the foundation aspect of what we're doing is crucial in terms of us preparing the young people as best we can for when they leave school. Because the participation measure, we don't always know the young people that will be contained within that. Now, I have to say again that the schools do maintain positive relationships, and sometimes young people will leave school and their first protocol, if they fall out a destination, is to come back to somebody at the school, and then the schools will then pass them on to people that can support them with that. But it is different cohorts, so we're not in complete control over. We are in control of the SLDR cohort. We don't necessarily know everybody that's in the annual participation measure, and that's what makes the closing of the gap a wee bit more complex, but we are very much focused on doing that.
I don't know if that clarified things in my mind, identifying the two different cohorts, as you say. I was just a wee bit concerned that, we seem to be saying, that loss from 99% down to 87% between the 19s to the 16-year-olds. This pattern is consistent with previous years, so I was wondering if there was a complacency there that we just accept that and we move on. It doesn't appear from your answer that is the case, which I'm quite pleased to hear. We are still focusing in, we are targeting on that. It's not a case of we've just forgotten that 10 or 12%. Yeah.
That's the national trend as well. So the destination data shows that young people, when they leave school, 16, 17, tend to be more likely to move into a positive destination, and that there is a drop-off once you hit 18, 19. So it is a national kind of figure as well. But we absolutely recognise that the job is to try and make sure that the young people are best prepared for the ever-changing world that they're moving into. And that's part of the reason why we're looking at these alternative support programmes to go into employment, into things like further education and things like that, because some of the young people don't have the same levels of support around them. So maybe young people have got family support that other young people don't have. So we're trying to bridge that gap by some of the work that we're doing just now. And hopefully if we get it right at the earlier stage, that figure won't continue to drop off as high as they progress through.
Again, just an acknowledgement, Provost. Thank you very much to the gentleman. Thank you.
Do you want to go in, John?
Sorry, I was just going to add a little bit to the conversation about the difference between the participation measure and the SLDR. So Murray's right that young people moving into Falkirk Council will be included in the participation measure, not having been through Falkirk Council schools, but the opposite is also true. Young people who have attended our schools the whole way through and then might move out for employment, or they might move out the Falkirk area for employment or university, they will be removed from our Falkirk Council annual participation measure data. So the annual participation measure data will have a core group of young people who are consistent from the SLDR into participation measure, but there'll be a new cohort who've moved into the area, who haven't attended our schools, but there'll also be a cohort who have moved out of Falkirk Council who have been through our schools, and then will be represented in somebody else's annual participation measure. So I think what we are committed to is analysing all this information to understand where we can intervene and provide interventions, but there are areas where we will not be able to do that. However, we are completely, as I say, just to repeat, completely committed to interrogating this to every level to understand if there's anybody in there or anything in there that we can actively do anything about as a council and as an education service.
Thanks for that. Councillor Balfour, do you have a follow-up question? Deputy Provost Balfour, sorry.
It's just a kind of general question, just on the back of the questions that have been asked so far and the information we've been given. I just wondered whether any of the school curriculum incorporates a part of or qualifications, professional qualifications such as the Cisco Networking Academy program, Microsoft Certified Professional, possibly some teaching elements, anything from like traditional apprenticeships, like the sort of academic side of that, just to maybe encourage the young people to go into a positive destination, whether it be striving to go for an apprenticeship or into college or university. I just wondered if there was anything utilised from the kind of professional side as well, the external professional side.
Mr. Reid?
Thank you, Councillor Balfour. Yes, the curriculum structure is absolutely crucial here. And what we find in Falkirk schools is that all of the secondary schools are delivering a wide range of qualifications and awards which are on the SCQF framework, so the Scottish Credit and Qualifications Framework, at different levels, from level 3 right up to level 7. So a whole choice and range of vocational and academic qualifications, and some of the things that you've been talking about, like the Microsoft accredited programs and Cisco networking and cybersecurity, and a whole range of courses like that will be options in schools, delivered through traditional subject choices, but also wider achievement opportunities that the young people can get on top of the qualifications they're studying. And the partnership with Forth Valley College is also important to continue to provide that for us, because they can provide some things that we just don't have the specialism and expertise to deliver. So there's a whole plethora of additional awards that stand on their own that are also achieved by our young people, and schools just make that an integral part of their curriculum planning. Absolutely. And I think what we're good at in Falkirk, because our secondaries have got early sight of what our young people, where our young people want to go and what they want to do when they leave school, they go the extra mile, I think, to make sure that if there are any opportunities that are just not offered as part of the norm, that we seek them out so that young people can have a very tailored and specialist programme according to what it is that's going to meet their needs.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Provost.
Thank you. I've just got a kind of a general question. Page 32. The list of core partners as part of the collaborative partnership and employability pipelines is extensive, including Falkirk Council, Concentrics, NHS, Falkirk Football Club, and Employability Service, formerly ETU. I'd just like to ask the extent of the partnership with armed forces and how we would support cadets. Do we do anything like that?
That's not something that's in place just now, but it is another thing we can look at. And these partners that are listed are not, it's not extensive. We are trying to develop that further. So any demographic that we identify that maybe needs further support, we would look at the best fit for those young people. And just continuing on from what John was talking about there in terms of our curricular offering, we are trying to develop the curricular opportunities for young people through their foundation apprenticeship offer that we're going to make next year for early learning and childcare. We would like to expand that further as well into other areas. The only challenge we've got there is that we don't necessarily, as a central team, access funding for that. So that can be quite challenging, but we are looking to expand as much as we can the curricular offering through the central team to make sure that young people are getting the best opportunities. But certainly the partnership aspect is something we're looking to develop further as well, and we're open to looking at any kind of group of young people that we find maybe need a bit of additional support and trying to best match the correct services to that.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Reid?
I'll just add to that about armed forces that schools are aware of young people who are in the cadets, and who may or may not have families who are involved with the armed forces. Absolutely, but this year, and we will put more information in the paper around positive destinations. There were, to our knowledge, and the data we have, around 5 young people whose families are in the armed forces, all of whom moved into positive destination, either into employment, training, further higher education. But it's individual schools that know the circumstances and the background of those young people best, and provide the appropriate support. But to our knowledge, all of them who are from an armed forces family are in a positive destination.
Excellent. Councillor Flynn?
Thank you, Provost. My question, just moving direction slightly, is it's obviously very impressive, the provision of iPads and obviously devices to all the schools. I just wondered on the 2 or 3 parts of the question. My first part really is, has the provision of these devices had a noticeable impact on the level of attainment?
I think, is that the next question? Next
Sorry.
item.
No, is it? No?
Aye. I think it was question 7 you were going to ask, Councillor Flynn.
Yeah, that is question 7, sorry. Yep. Have I got that wrong then? Is there 2 question 7s?
Just to say, Councillor Flynn, there is that the question 7 you're referring to is the one for the connected Falkirk. There is a question.
All right, my apologies. We'll save that for later.
If it helps, maybe the Provost might want to read that one out.
Yeah, thank you.
Right, so Appendix 3 shows national participation figures broken down by age and gender, ethnicity, disability and SIMD. This was not included in the covering report to show the local picture. Can a local breakdown be provided?
Just to point out, the paper that we've brought today is around the strategy. We're bringing a fairly comprehensive paper in May around the breakdown of the data and the outcomes. So we will bring all that data to you. It's just that it's only recently been released. So the formal release of all the finalised data to do with leavers is we got around it was the end of February. So that data became official at the end of February, which kind of came after we had to pull this paper together. So what we're committed to doing is providing a comprehensive rundown of all the breakdowns within the positive destination characteristics at that stage, if that's okay.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I think that's all the questions. So we'll now go to Councillor Meiklejohn, Leader of the Council, who's standing in for Councillor Sinclair as the portfolio holder. Councillor Meiklejohn.
Thank you, Provost, and apologies from Councillor Sinclair. He's got an emergency appointment at the dentist, so I think he'll be all kind of frozen up just now. So I offered just to step in, just to say that I think this is a really good strategy. It's building on what Falkirk's already been doing around maintaining those positive destinations. And we are not sitting back and saying this is good enough. We want to do more. We want to give better outcomes and push those boundaries so that everybody has the opportunity to have a fulfilling future, irrespective of their abilities. And I know from personal experience the level of work that goes in, irrespective of whether the young people are in mainstream or in, for example, Cairn Grange, that goes into trying to find the most appropriate longer term positive destination. What I would say is what I found really beneficial as hearing some of the lived experience of the young people and the families who have been through the process, and in particular the example of Project Search. And just very briefly, I had a delivery which was from the Royal Mail. The postman knocked my door, and he then went on to say thank you. And I'm thinking, right, you're giving me the parcel, so why are you saying thank you? My son went through Project Search, and he is living his best life working for ASDA. And that just goes to show that everybody has the ability to do something. It's just finding the right route to do that. And I'm sure there are many more stories like that, particularly from our looked after and accommodated young people as well. So when the report comes forward, I would ask the officers to maybe give a little bit of a view around that lived experience so that we can all share in the positive outcomes for our young people going forward. But I'm pleased that we have this refreshed strategy, a new strategy that is looking to push the boundaries and make sure that we continue to strive to do the best for our young people. Thanks, Provost.
Thanks, Councillor Meiklejohn. So, in summary, a really positive report overall. When you think there's 1,760 school leavers in 23-24, and it's 96.25% positive destination, so that's 1,694 out of 1,760. So that was, what's that, 66 people that are not reaching positive destinations, but the focus on them is remarkable, how we can assist them. So I think overall, as Councillor Meiklejohn was saying, it's a really, the strategy is excellent, and we're moving, and everything we've heard today, I think everybody would echo what I'm saying, that it's really positive going forward for our young people. So thank you for that. And I know all the effort that education puts in for our young people. You speak to all the teachers and everybody is really quite remarkable and dedicated to the future of our kids. So thank you for that. I'll just go back to the recommendations. Recommendation 1, note the Falkirk Futures employability strategy for the school leavers, and note the ongoing work to provide a range of support to young people to allow them to progress to a post-school positive destination. Can we note these reports? Thank you. So thank you very much for coming in today. That's been enlightening, to be honest with you, and it's good to hear all the good work that's being done. So keep up the good work. Thank you. We'll now move to agenda item 6, Powered by Connected Falkirk, pages 76 to 104, and it's Mr. Lenny.
Thank you, Provost, and good morning, everyone. The Powered by Connected Falkirk report provides members with an evidence-rich overview of the progress, impact and outcomes of the Connected Falkirk digital learning programme across all Falkirk schools. It highlights how the investment made in equitable device access, high-speed connectivity and modern infrastructure has transformed learning and teaching from primary 1 through to secondary 6. All of our learning establishments now have equitable access to cutting-edge, resilient technology. The report outlines the scale of the deployment, the structure of the digital learning team and our approaches, and the extensive professional learning offer that supports staff to embed digital pedagogy effectively. Usage data included in the report demonstrates widespread, sustained engagement with devices, creative apps, and online learning environments. The report also contains case studies and classroom examples that illustrate how digital tools are reshaping learning experiences across the curriculum in Falkirk Council education establishments. We're even taking the tech outside to support outdoor learning now. And it's not just us saying that it's positive. External validation from HMIE and independent research by Queen Margaret University confirms significant improvements in digital practice, learner independence, accessibility, and teaching quality across our establishments. And the report also details innovative developments such as the Connected Learning Programme, which is a virtual senior phase subject offering, and its growth over the past 5 years. This delivery model, ensuring the widest possible equitable access to senior phase subject choice, is only possible due to the investment in one-to-one device access and infrastructure provided through Connected Falkirk. Additionally, Falkirk's proactive and nationally recognised work in developing local support and guidance to improve AI literacy in our pupils and teachers is outlined. Overall, the report evidences that Connected Falkirk has moved the authority from inconsistent access to an embedded, future-ready digital ecosystem that enhances equity, creativity and learning outcomes for all young people in Falkirk. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions or comments that you may have on the report.
Okay, thanks for that, Mr. Lenny. First question is, there are over, this is page 83, there are over 16,000 devices, and the report states that devices are provided for each pupil from P6 to S6, and at a ratio of 1 to 5 pupils from P1 to P5. How many eligible pupils are there, and do all eligible pupils have devices?
Yes, so when we first did the deployment, in terms of one-to-one devices, the eligible pupils were around 13,287. That has now increased by up to 14,002, and we can confirm that all eligible pupils do have access to the device.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nimmo, did you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Provost. Morning, Stuart. Quick question for you just on the back of the Provost one. iPads and laptops, I think you already said that they're made available to everybody, but are they available to the senior phase in our high schools?
Yes, iPads are available to all our senior phase as well as PC infrastructure too.
Right, does that come with Wi-Fi as well, if they don't have Wi-Fi at home?
We don't provide Wi-Fi with it, but what we have done through the Connected Falkirk programme is ensure that Wi-Fi SIDs are available in public buildings such as libraries, and it's freely accessible there, and all Connected Falkirk devices, just like your laptops as councillors as well, will automatically connect when they're in that council building or library environment.
Okay, I have another question just tagged onto that as well, Stuart. I know John's aware of it because I've already emailed him the details regarding this. I have an inquiry from a Grangemouth High School pupil who is having to travel from Grangemouth to Braes High School to do a higher in history. It's not the best use of the pupil's time because she's spending about maybe 4 hours on buses. And next year she plans, hopefully, to do advanced hires in maths and physics, but she's going to have to travel to Larbert High School for that. And that means another 4 hours a day on buses just to get there. How long does an advanced higher class or higher class last
Do you want to take that offline, Councillor Nimmo, Mr. Reid?
Well, I was hoping for an answer, Provost.
It's not really part of this meeting, to be honest, Councillor Nimmo. So you're quite happy to take it offline?
Well, I've already emailed John Reid, but it's in relation to the Wi-Fi access. These classes would be a lot better getting done online instead of having pupils transported for hours every day. But I'll leave it.
Okay, no, Mr. Reid want to make a comment on it, Councillor Nimmo, so we'll go ahead.
Okay.
No, thank you, Councillor Nimmo. I think I have responded to you on that inquiry. Apologies if I haven't. I will double check that you've got a response for that. This is the issue you describe is exactly the issue that is being addressed through the Connected Learning programme, and in 26-27 we anticipate that we will have 20 different subjects available in 26 different classes, which is making really good use of the investment of the individual devices. So the number of young people that will need to travel around the authority will be greatly reduced because of the expansion of the Connected Learning programme. But if I haven't responded to you directly, I thought I had, I will make sure that you get an individual response for that inquiry. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Okay. Thanks, Provost.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McCabe.
Thank you, Provost. I note from the report that we had budgeted £9.6 million over the period of 20 to 24, I think it was 25. I'm assuming that's all been fully utilised, and we included a budget allocation for 26-27. Can you give me a figure for that? And just leading on to what Mr. Reid had mentioned there, about trying to roll out some Wi-Fi access as well. We were talking earlier on about the provision of iPads. Is there an insurance liability for those iPads, and is that included within this new budget, or is that covered by a kind of corporate insurance? Just curious as to how we protect the.
Yes, I can confirm, Councillor McCabe, that the £9.6 million that was in the budget has been fully utilised. There's an allocation of just under £7 million in the capital programme to replace all devices in the programme in financial year 26-27. In terms of your insurance question, there is no separate insurance on the devices. We do put additional protection on the devices physically in terms of to reduce damage, although they are covered under council insurance should there be any significant incident or loss.
Thank you very much for that. Appreciate it, Provost. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a quick question on sort of demographics. So as the school roll increases, does that have an effect on the funding for iPads? Do you need additional funding?
So thank you, Provost. So we work closely with our colleagues in forward planning to look at school roles and classroom configurations. And because of that, I can say with confidence that the budget that's allocated going forward from 26-27 is more than adequate to cover the expansion or needs in those classroom configurations.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to Deputy Provost Buffer.
Thanks, Provost. I just have a few questions. The first one is, what happens to the old kit, the old iPads, PCs, etc.? And is there any option of getting any money back for these?
Thank you, Deputy Provost. So as part of the re-procurement exercise that we're currently going through, and because it is a live procurement exercise, I can't say too much about it, but there is an element within that where we will realise the value of these devices. They're now 5 years old. They are 3 or 4 generations away from what's available today. So as part of that procurement exercise, we will be recognising some value back to the council. I can't obviously quote any figures just now because it is a live procurement exercise.
Okay, thank you. Right, the next question is, of these iPads, for example, that are going to be replaced, is there any of these can be reused? I'm thinking possibly rebuilt for the public network and perhaps used in the libraries to help show possibly older people how to access the internet, how to manipulate images, etc., access email. Is there any kind of programs like that through the libraries or elsewhere?
Thank you, Deputy Provost. What we've got to keep in mind is that these devices are 5 to 6 years old now. And as I said in my previous response, these are 8th generation devices currently available in the market. You're looking at 11th generation and possibly moving on soon to 12th generation. So there's a bit of a risk to the council should we reuse these devices because they're getting to a stage where they're going to be past updates. And therefore it becomes a cyber security risk to the council. So I think what we would rather do is realise the value that's left in those devices and also look to anything that comes out of community benefits through the procurement contract that we're about to undertake. The other thing I would point out to members is that all our public libraries have device lending options as well as digital skills training. So I'm bigging up the public libraries there for their digital use.
Okay, right. If we move on, I just wondered about that mentions borrow box for the libraries. Quite recently, there was several schools in Grangemouth where the pupils had researched information from different countries and they'd made up several small books and illustrated them, etc. And they've been released on the borrow box. I just wondered what collaboration there was with other authorities to share locally produced booklets and things like that.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Provost. So one of the joys of BorrowBox, and as you see in the report, what BorrowBox is allows e-audiobooks and e-books to be borrowed by anyone with a GLO account, so our pupils and our teachers in Falkirk Council schools, and we've got 4,000 resources on there that are licensed, but as you mentioned, we also have the ability for pupils to create content, and they can do that on their connected Falkirk device. They can use the Pages app that's built in there to create ebooks, and then through the Learning Resource Service, upload the content and share it more widely. And one of the advantages of BorrowBox, as you point out, is that it's used in other authorities. And when that content goes up, they can indeed share more widely with other BorrowBox users outside the council. So yes, that can be tagged and that can be shared. I believe the Grangemouth one you're referring to is the S1 group, and I did notice a book on Perseus the last time I looked on BorrowBox, and I've forgotten what god Perseus was, but I'm going to go and look at it after this.
Okay, just one other quick question, if we just go back a slight bit. Some of the IT equipment that's old and broken, for example. I remember a number of years ago, there was a company came into some of the schools in Grangemouth and I think elsewhere in the district. And they had old broken kit in from typewriters to telephones to mobile phones and whatever. And they were showing the pupils how these things come apart and how they can be reused, or how elements out of them can be reused, like precious metals and things like that. Is there anything in place like that for some of the broken kit that we have?
So the iPads are sealed units, so it really is difficult to componentize them and take them to bits in the way that you're referring to. But in the past, I'm aware of corporate colleagues allowing us to get some desktop PCs that are beyond use to undertake that exercise to allow pupils to see the workings of a computer and what each part is. I myself am a technical teacher, and we used to do it as part of our technical work where we would show pupils how components could be made, manufactured, and then assembled.
Okay, is that still happening?
It is still happening, yes.
Okay, that's fantastic. Okay, thanks for that. Thanks, Provost.
Thanks, Deputy Provost. I've just got a quick question. Page 77, the report states Connected Falkirk provides families with an opportunity to be digitally connected. Is this for families that don't have Wi-Fi and we try to support them, or what is that?
Yeah, I think it was a poor choice of words on our part. What we're referring to there is because the Connected Falkirk device travels between home and school, it's allowing families to see the work that's going on in school more easily in terms of through the digital device. But one thing that isn't mentioned in the report is our work we've done as a team to develop family learning as well. So we've developed with schools some family learning courses that allow digital skills to be built through the engagement between schools and their parent cohort. It's also probably best to outline that all of our digital learning sessions that we create as a team go out on our YouTube channel, and they're freely available for anybody, including families, to access in order to build their digital skills.
So is that to try and maybe parents that are no familiar with iPads and that, is it just to sort of, because if they're going to try and help their kids, it'd be important for them to, so is that what it is really?
Indeed, and we hear that anecdotally from pupils when we talk to them, that they are making efforts to upskill the digital abilities at home as well, because as we know, we are a digitally driven society now, and anything that upskills parents in these matters is worthwhile.
Okay, thank you. We'll now go to Councillor Forrest.
Thank you. Thanks, Provost. That was a good question, and mine leads on from that, because obviously the kids learn a lot from their families and vice versa. But some pupils will be more or less proficient than others in this. Count myself in that. Right. But can you tell us a wee bit more about the extra help that they would get if they need it?
Thank you very much, Councillor. So obviously we have a range of supports in Connected Falkirk. Every device that is given out has a link on it that takes all users directly to support materials, self-study support materials, and demonstration videos for certain topics. We do that through our range of blogs. We have a DigiLearn Falk blog, we have a Connected Falkirk blog, and we also have Apple-specific training that it links to as well. Now, obviously, we've done a large part of work upskilling our teaching community as well. They have come from a mixed level of ability, and you'll see in the report the stats around their responses about how much their digital skills have gone on through the Connected Falkirk programme. We also have things like pupil digital leaders in school who are digital specialists. My son is one, which I'm proud of, in primary schools, and he goes round and supports other pupils and other staff to develop their digital skills and to support in class in terms of digital use to bring up the level of digital that's embedded in the curriculum.
That's good to know. There are three levels. There's the digital, there's teaching, and peers, older pupils. They do tend to learn an awful lot quicker when it's their pals that are teaching them.
Indeed. And it's great giving them that responsibility as well.
Yes, Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Forrest. So go to Deputy Provost Balfour.
But that's a legacy hand.
Oh, like I thought it might be a legacy hand. I just wanted to ask a question about 9.8 million significant investment. So, and how do you measure, if you can, the difference it's made to people's education, like in the attainment? How do you, I mean, that's a big investment. What difference has it made to the pupils? You know, how do you sort of quantify that? I feel like it seems fairly obvious, I know, you know, but I mean, how do you actually articulate that?
Thank you, Provost. So attainment's a really tricky thing to correlate to just one thing. Right. So it's a very challenging thing in education to correlate attainment to one thing. But what we look at and what the Queen Margaret University researchers said would be better to look at is engagement. And engagement in education through the device use. Now, engagement's a primary driver of academic attainment. Good engagement means active participation in learning, and that's what the university researchers saw and what HMIE has now seen since the introduction of Connected Falkirk. And we hear that from learners too. Devices are removing their barriers to learning, allowing them to personalise their learning, which improves their engagement as well. And if I can give an example of this, on a recent visit to a secondary school, we were doing some lesson observations, and it was an S1 English class. And we didn't come in at the start of the lesson, we came in part way. And as you stood outside the class and you looked in, what you would have seen was 20 plus pupils sitting with the Connected Falkirk devices, working on what was a section of text from a novel and discussing it with the teacher. Now, standing outside the class and looking in, you would think everybody was doing the same, and it wasn't until you go into the class and you walk up the back and you look on the screens, what you realise is that pupils were using accessibility tools that were built into devices to customise their lesson experience in order to take away those barriers to their learning. So some had a larger font, some had a different coloured background. One pupil who had English as an additional language had the dictionary set to his native language and was translating, so he understood everything that was going on in the class. But as I say, if you'd looked on, or if you thought back to how we did it with textbooks, that's the level of differentiation, that's the level of accessibility use, and that's what removes the barriers to learning for these pupils.
So, have we asked the pupils how they felt, if they felt a difference? You know, have we said, what difference has it made to your life, really, you know?
Oh, and we've got a very, very good recent example of this. We recently had civil servants from the Learning Directorate at Scottish Government over to visit one of our secondary schools, and as part of that, the visit was to look at our use of devices to support children with ASM. And as part of that, we had groups of children from several Falkirk Council schools, and I'll just mention one. I'll mention one because I think that this is important. This is a pupil who is blind. And yet is managing to access mainstream education. And the way she's accessing mainstream education is through the use of her Connected Falkirk device. Mm-hmm. So that device is her eyes. The apps that are in it allow her to get a description back to her as to what's in front of her, as to what's around her, as to everything that's going on. And that, in conjunction with her Braille typewriter that she has, which works through the Connected Falkirk Wi-Fi, allows her to be an equal participant in all the learning that's going on in her class. Well,
I remember when Mr. Reid came along before he was director, came along to the council with pupils when we're just talking about these iPads and the difference it could make. And the pupils showed, you know, they're maybe writing an essay, then they send it to their teacher, and the teacher would maybe highlight, perhaps you could look at this, perhaps you could look at that, and just send it straight back. And that was, it was a no-brainer at the time when we saw what the potential of it was, you know. I think, so I'm glad we're here. So I'm just going to ask a quick question before we go. No, we'll go to Councillor Flynn first.
Yep, thank you, Provost. Really just following on from what you said, it's very impressive, the monetary investment in the equipment and also the level of equipment. How do we compare with other local authorities? Because I'm guessing that other local authorities maybe don't provide the same level of that. And through that, are we able to compare, say, with a lower providing authority in terms of the attainment that's actually achieved, even though it's difficult to measure?
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. It's really a challenge to do that, because not only is attainment a very difficult thing to correlate to one measure, but additionally, not every local authority that has a device programme has a one-to-one device programme. So I think there's 11 authorities out there, and us, 12 in total, and no two authorities are doing it the same way. So it really is a difficult thing to measure, and it's something that I know Scottish Government have wrestled with as well.
Okay, no, thank you for that. And just a quick supplementary question, slightly different, is that obviously iPads do get damaged, these things happen, and that. Do the parents or the children have to pick up the cost of that, or do we have any agreements with local computer companies to assist, with the repair of that device?
So, thank you, Councillor. Yeah, so we do have an agreement in place to make sure it's fixed cost repair, and we do give guidance to schools as to what that cost is, and then also to take into account family circumstances and levying that cost. So we do minimise cost to people if there is damage. If it's accidental, we can pick it up in other ways, but if it's unpurposeful, then we do have a chargeback programme that the schools follow.
Okay, no, thank you for that, and thank you, Provost.
Mr. Reid.
Thank you, and just to add to what Stuart said there in response to Councillor Flynn's question, first of all, I think the number of iPads that are deliberately damaged is a tiny proportion of the overall number that we have across our estate. It's almost negligible. Obviously, there's accidental damage, and Stuart has already described the different ways we deal with that. But in terms of the impact on attainment, I think the whole purpose of the programme has not been about providing devices to teachers and to pupils. The whole purpose of the programme has been about redefining how learning is delivered by teachers and collaborating with young people across our schools. Yes, developing those really early digital ICT skills in our ELCs down to that level, in our primaries, upper stages of primary, and absolutely through secondary. But it isn't just about giving kids a device so that they can, instead of writing their English essay, they're typing their English essay. It's about transforming learning and teaching to make outcomes better. And this is really just one part of the bigger jigsaw of everything we're doing in education that is contributing and is impacting on our outcomes for external validation and for our attainment measures that are seeing improvements in terms of the trend. Now, we can't put it down to one specific thing, but everything we do it as robustly as we possibly can, and we change things if it's not working. And that's why we've been making changes and developing the Connected Falkirk and the Connected Learning Programme and the support it provides as we go through. And I'll just leave you with this little analogy, because I think this sums it up. That if you want to watch a movie on Friday night, you can download it from Netflix in 2 minutes on your 1 gigabit home connection, and you get it instantly. 15 years ago, you would have to go to Blockbuster to browse the video cassettes that were on offer and then hire it and take it home and then put it into your VHS device.
Yep.
That is the difference, I think, in really simple terms, that Connected Falkirk has made to the way learning and teaching is delivered by our staff in our schools. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll now go to Councillor Aitchison.
Yep, thanks, Provost. And it probably leads on to the last couple of questions. On page 99, one of the statistics say, how often do you use Connected Falkirk devices in your school activities? This is from primary teachers. 1% has said never. Now, I can understand, and I can think of a few reasons off the top of my head why that would be. But is that giving some of our younger people a less positive experience?
I think when we looked at the data, there were some statistical anomalies. We believe that survey got into the hands of people who weren't teachers, and that's why that was flagged up.
No, that wasn't recorded. Okay. Is that you, Councillor Aitchison? Okay. I've just got a question on pupils have a responsibility to sort of look after iPads and that. So what are the percent? It's not even covered this. What are the percentage of breakages and the associated costs?
I don't have the exact figures here, but I can get them to you.
Okay. What else was I going to ask? So the 9.8 million, that was to improve Wi-Fi in the schools as well. It wasn't just for the iPads.
Yeah. So it wasn't just devices. I'll give you a kind of rough breakdown as to the areas it was spent on. The 9.6 million. It was devices. We had device enablement and management software. So these devices are managed. They're not just domestic environment devices. Cases, chargers, Bluetooth keyboards. We put a selection of Bluetooth keyboards into schools. Caching servers. So caching servers sit in the network and basically allow content to be cached locally. So if you're pushing an app out to a device, for example, you don't want a Larbert Highsworth of iPads downloading that same app. What it does is the first app comes down, it gets cached locally, and then the other devices fetch it from that local place rather than strangling the network connection that's there. Also put internet security appliances in schools, and it's probably worth touching on the difference that Connected Falkirk made to the wider council at that point. When we first put in Connected Falkirk, we used a new technology called SD-WAN. Happy to talk about it offline if you want. But basically what that means is it stopped us using point-to-point internet connections. Previously in schools, all schools connected point-to-point to municipal buildings, and that then funneled down to one internet connection that went out the door. But when we were looking at designing Connected Falkirk, what we did was we looked at the amount of internet traffic that was being used, which was far higher than traffic to local services that were needed. So what we did was we looked at a new technology called SD-WAN, which basically prioritizes the traffic out to the internet rather than to local services. And it was so successful that the rest of the council adopted that in order to support the migration away from municipal buildings. So all council buildings now have Connected Falkirk Wi-Fi in them. There's an access point up there, a wee Cisco Meraki Wi-Fi 6 access point. And all council buildings have benefited from the Connected Falkirk programme.
Okay. Were we the first in Scotland to get this?
To get
Connected Falkirk.
To get one-to-one devices, no, we weren't. I think we're about fourth. But as I say,
so we're ahead of the game.
We're ahead of the game.
Right.
Yeah, I would say though, I think this is an important distinguishing factor is we were the first to do it in-house. So although we partnered with a technology partner to provide the devices, XMA, we were the first local authority to do it with our own people. So we did it with our Falkirk, and two of them are on the screen just now, Mary Jane Wilcox and
Wow.
Kerry Abercrombie from the digital learning team, who remind me some of the things that went on back 6 years ago. But yeah, we took local educators because they know Falkirk schools, they're credible, and that helped staff buy-in when we did this. So we were the first in Scotland to do it with our own Falkirk Council people.
And there was money in the most recent budget to refresh
Yes, there is.
iPads and that as well, so sort of future-proof, if you like.
Indeed.
I'll just go to Councillor Balfour, because I recall him asking something about resilience and backup plan or something like that. Is that correct, Deputy Provost Balfour?
Yes. Where are we? Aye, I'm just trying to think. Aye, what kind of backup plans is there if servers go down, networks goes down? Is there like a recovery backup plan or anything like that? A disaster recovery?
Schools have local business continuity planning in such events. So if a service or a connection goes down, one thing about teachers is we're incredibly resilient. We change plans all the time based on what happens in front of us. So yeah, in terms of uptime though, the companies that we commission to work with have an incredibly high uptime rate. So outages in the first instance will be very, very rare. And when they do happen, it's often a local issue, power related, rather than a service issue. But in terms of that, we do always have alternative plans in schools and in classes when sometimes power fails us and technology fails us. Having said that, the devices themselves, because they don't have to be permanently tethered to the internet. The devices themselves can be used offline. So most of the apps that are available on these devices, you can work offline until you get an opportunity to reconnect, and then it would sync back to bring whatever you've done back up to the cloud or internet stored version. So there's still opportunities to use devices even though there's no internet.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks, Deputy Provost Balfour. Just final question for me about AI, where it can be misused, can be inaccurate, and can generate sort of inappropriate content. So how is that managed, and what's the thoughts for the future on AI? If that's possible to answer.
Yeah, I might bring in Kerry Abercrombie in a minute, who's our resident AI expert, but one thing I will outline to members, and it is mentioned in the report, is that we were ahead of the game on this, I think. We put together our guiding principles and support around generative AI and AI use in general, and we've developed that to support schools in order for them to develop their AI literacy and also the AI literacy of pupils that they teach. So firstly, we've limited access to a specific number of generative AI products on our network, done that in conjunction with our corporate colleagues, and we've limited it down to what we call our AI starter suite of tools, and those are a subset of education-specific AI tools, and the reason they're education-specific is that they have a moderation element to it, so it's a sandbox, it's a playground where we can teach how to use AI safely and talk about the pitfalls of AI in a moderated and safe environment. Kerry, I don't know if there's anything you want to add on top of that.
Yeah, absolutely, if I can. It's just to say that within that starter suite, that is bound up in a lot of work that we've been doing on AI literacy. We recognise fully the importance that AI literacy has, not just for children in schools, but also for everybody in society at the moment. And it's something that we are looking to enfold into the work that we currently do. We've already started this with our promptathon materials, which have been praised by Education Scotland and have actually been used by colleagues in other countries as a model of teaching AI literacy in quite a visual way to children and young people. And absolutely, AI literacy is going to be the focus going forward. Now that we have our guiding principles in place, and now that we have our starter suite that provide a safe suite of tools for teachers and young people to use, the focus is going to be on AI literacy going forward in a very comprehensive way.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Mr. Reid.
Thank you. And as Kerry mentioned there, we're also looking at how AI can improve the work that teachers carry out. And just to mention that we are involved in a Scottish Government initiative called CivTech, and specifically a programme called Trellis, which is looking to reduce the workload for ASN teachers and for pupil support teachers through the development of AI technology. So reduce the you will be familiar with the fact that we have team around the child meetings, really important for supporting young people. There's a whole range of professionals around the table at that meeting, and what this technology does is captures the note of that meeting, and very specifically and very expertly converts it into a plan for that child. Wow. And saves the members of staff who would normally spend several hours writing that plan up, and it does it almost in an instant for them. So wow. We are, I think it was one of 4 authorities that were involved in that project initially. It's now been expanded to another 4 authorities, and I think the plan is, with continued funding from Scottish Government, to roll it out across Scotland. But it's good to be in there and influencing the direction that that's taken.
Well, that's incredible. Councillor McCabe.
Thank you, Provost. Just coming on the back of your question, raising the, for me, the worrying introduction of AI. Yeah, it can be a very positive thing, but I've got severe, serious concerns about the potential abuses of it. So I note from the report that we have been asked to consider a note report. I'm quite happy to do that. I'm delighted to do that. But I wonder if it's at this point, would it be prudent to maybe for the Scrutiny Committee to be considering whether we ask for a report to come back to us, again, just reinforcing the performance indications, the performance information that were given. I think it'd be good to have a report there. But I would specifically like to drill down on the future uses of AI. I've got serious concerns about, the potential. An example, I set a higher class, go away and write me up an essay on the Romans and United Kingdom, back in the day. I then go and check it and find out that out of the 50 that I'd asked, 49 came back with exactly the same essay, because I've just gone and abused the AI system. You get the same essay written for you. So I was just wondering, would it be worthwhile the Scrutiny Committee maybe asking, the director to, include that, with an emphasis on that. I don't know, Mr. Reid.
I think I'm quite happy to do that. I think the rollout of AI within Falkirk is within a clear structure, and AI is never going to replace the job of a teacher. And so when they get 29 essays in that look the same, then they will absolutely be addressing that. But there are young people, who are very proficient in the use of AI. But I think the checks and balances have got to be there. We're looking at the benefits. How will it improve workload for our staff? How will it improve learning and and teaching, because it can access some content that previously would take hours to access. How will it improve the assessment and feedback to young people is also really important, because that's one of the biggest things that makes the biggest impact in their overall attainment and achievement. But there is guidance from the likes of Qualifications Scotland and in our in the guidelines and principles that we're operating by about the safe and responsible use of AI, as we previously would have had when we first introduced technology, about the safe and responsible use of technology. It's just the next phase of that. But be happy to come back with a further paper, perhaps illustrating some of the work that is taking place in the service to provide some reassurance around that front and future direction of use of AI in education.
Thank you for that, Mr. Reid. I'm loath to ask for additional reports or whatever, but I do feel that this is it's a technology which is advancing all the time. It's advancing fairly quickly, but I appreciate your answer there. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Reid. Oh, Mr. Perry. Kerry, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify as well that AI literacy and the model that we use doesn't just focus on using AI and how to use it. It does also focus on the ethical implications, responsible use. It covers the potential pitfalls and misinformation and reliability of AI as well. So AI literacy, by definition, is more than just how to use AI. It does include that whole societal ethical piece as well. So I just wanted to reassure the councillor that that is part of that programme of learning.
Thank you for that. That's very helpful. We'll now go to Leader of the Council, Councillor Michael John, to give our views.
Thank you, Provost. Like yourself, I remember when this project first came forward, and I also remember the intense scrutiny that it was under at the time, as there were some real reservations about the level of investment. However, we were convinced at the time by our educationalists and supported by the rest of the council, and we took a decision at the time which was a bit of ahead of the game, to do that investment and also to do it in-house. I think it put us in a good position because we didn't quite realise what was in front of us as we went into COVID. And having had those devices to extend out during that time, I believe helped us in getting back to a pre-COVID level with our young people. Also, it helped us to educate the wider communities around the use of digital going forward, because, as been said, it is with us. It's part of our future. It's going to be something that we're all going to have to deal with, particularly our young people as they move through school into higher and further education or into a working environment. So having that experience at that level just now really does make the difference in the opportunities for the future. I think the issues that were just raised there around AI, there was a session on Connected Falkirk for elected members. Unfortunately, it wasn't particularly well attended by elected members, and it did include a really good bit on understanding AI. I do appreciate the pressures on the service, but it may well be worth maybe rerunning even part of that session for elected members to let them understand how AI is being used as an educational tool, because I think that it was really, really enlightening, but it also demonstrates how it can be used in a positive way and in a way that can help support the future of our young people, our learning, but also help to educate the wider council in the use of AI, and that we shouldn't be so frightened of that. I know from speaking to particularly senior pupils, they have found some of the more digital ways of learning has been really, really helpful, whether that be through classroom learning, and I'm sure Mr. Lenny will correct me if it's wrong, through is it an OWL that we've used that helps that the teachers engage with classes across the district, as opposed to just everybody being sitting in the one place, and that allows that wider learning, which our young people have really enjoyed. They are much more adaptable than some of our older folks like myself, and we should be sort of learning a little bit more from them. But I think the Connected Falkirk has been a great success, and the continued investment helps us to continue to push that. There's certain areas, as has been said, where we are sector leading, and it's created a great interest from government about how we can do that in areas that are transformational going forward. So I'm really pleased to see this report and the positive comments from members.
Thanks very much, Councillor Meikle-John. I think you've summarised it pretty well. I don't think I need to say anything. This is a really positive report, and I'd like to thank Mr. Lenny for his really excellent answers to everything, never faltered once. And it is the future. It is the way we've got to go. And as Mr. Reid talked about the VHS tapes as to where we are now, that's it. And where we're going to be in another 10 years. So we've always got to keep ahead of the game. But for our young people, it's definitely beneficial, that that you think they're learning, you can go and do yourself, just online. And it's the feedback for speaking to a lot of people is that they love it. They think it's great. It's a big change in their life. And it helps them educate their parents as well. I'll show you how this works, or so you can. So really positive report, and I don't think I can't add anything to what Councillor Meikle-John says. I think she's summarised it very well. So in the recommendations is consider and note the progress of the Connected Falkirk programme and its impact on learning and teaching across Falkirk Council education establishments. So can we agree that? Okay, thank you. I'll just go to Mr. Purry to sum up.
Unfortunately, that wasn't quite the correct answer. So Councillor McCabe had asked for a report. The report asked you to consider, and you've done that, and the outcome, I think, is you've asked for a report. And as I understand it, there was two parts. One was in performance information. So that's teasing out the number of iPads rolled out and how they were, I suppose, rolled out every year, part of the programme. And just picking up on what members had said prior to the meeting, like breakages and costs and disposal. So just general information about that, but then also moving on to the AI element, which Mr. Reid said he was happy to provide. And I'd taken a note of some of the issues. Down. On so AI literacy, the checks and balances, safeguarding elements. So we'll put a detail in the minute of the actual ask from the committee and get that to the service so they can bring a report back on that. If members are happy to do that.
Yep. Everybody happy with that?
Yep.
Happy with that. Okay, so thanks again for your input. It's wonderful. Keep up the good work. And thanks for coming here, and thanks for sharing. Thank you. So we'll now take a 10-minute comfort break for the last report. Thank you.
Everyone.
Okay, welcome back everyone. We'll now move to agenda item 7, early learning and childcare sufficiency, pages 105 to 120. And it will be Mrs Davison, I think, is speaking to the report. Thank you. Okay, Ms McCabe.
Okay, good morning, convener and members. I'm pleased to be introducing this report today, which has the purpose of providing assurance that Falkirk Council continues to meet its statutory duty to provide sufficient early learning and childcare for all eligible 2 to 5-year-olds, while delivering high quality and flexible provision aligned to the Council plan priority of promoting positive opportunities and educational attainment and reducing inequalities. The report is set within the context of Early Learning and Childcare Expansion 2020, which saw a duty being placed on local authorities to make available up to 1,140 hours per year of funded early learning and childcare to all eligible 2 to 5-year-olds. The full context of how this duty has been applied in Falkirk is summarised in paragraphs 3.1 to 3.5. Section 4 of the report provides members with detail as to the Council's approach to ensuring that there are sufficient places for eligible children. Paragraphs 4.1 to 4.3 explains that provision in Falkirk is delivered through a mix of council nurseries, council ELC centres, private nurseries and childminders, ensuring both choice and accessibility for parents. Paragraph 4.4 explains that sufficiency is assessed across 3 elements. These are providers and places, occupancy and admissions. Further details of each of these elements is given in paragraphs 4.5 to 4.29, which confirm that Falkirk Council maintains a strong spread of ELC providers across all wards and that the total registered capacity continues to exceed the highest admissions recorded, ensuring sufficiency. Ongoing monitoring of occupancy remains essential in the context of falling birth rates, with annual adjustments to operating capacity keeping most nursery classes above 90% occupancy, as seen in Appendix 1, and extended year centres operating at or near full capacity is shown in Appendix 2. Demand for additional hours continues to be strong, and this generates additional revenue. Admissions have consistently remained above 3,000 each year. Appendix 3 provides a breakdown of admissions of 3 to 5-year-olds attending the different provider types, with around 85% of eligible children attending council nurseries. Despite demographic pressures, over 90% of families continue to receive their first choice placement, demonstrating strong alignment between parental demand and available capacity. The remainder of Section 4 relates to funded 2-year-olds, with a demonstration that uptake remains positive and are supported by various approaches which are summarised in paragraphs 433 to 435. The conclusion confirms that Falkirk Council continues to deliver early learning and childcare efficiently, using flexible models tailored to each establishment while ensuring regulatory compliance and high occupancy. Families benefit from a strong mix of council nurseries, private nurseries and childminders, giving them accessible options that support their working patterns and individual needs. Almost all families receive their first choice placement, and this demonstrates a strong alignment between local demand and available capacity. The service continues to strengthen support for eligible 2-year-olds through innovative approaches that have improved uptake and attendance. And looking ahead, falling birth rates will require ongoing monitoring of admissions and resource deployment to maintain efficiency and responsiveness across the ELC estate. Overall, the evidence confirms that Falkirk's ELC provision is sufficient, high quality and responsive to community needs, supporting improved outcomes and reduced inequalities for children and families across the area. And myself and my colleagues are happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that concise report. Page 108, 4.6, of the 47 primary schools in Falkirk, 39 have a nursery class under the management of the head teacher. According to Appendix 1, across all wards, nursery class occupancy rates have varied year on year. Some years there might be unused capacity, and in others there might be no remaining capacity. I wonder if you could maybe expand on that a wee bit, how that is actually.
Okay, so occupancy rates are basically tied to the admissions. So across the three elements that I mentioned in my introduction, it's a fine balance, I suppose, through all of those elements. The low occupancy rates that are represented in the report really reflect the low registrations in that year. When I explained about monitoring, that really is about looking across a kind of wider horizon of time. So that being about a 3 to 5 year horizon of time. And over that horizon, if occupancy is continuing to be at a lower rate, then we would take some decision or take some account of that and maybe look to overall reduce capacity through staffing allocations. But really, the low occupancy reflects the admissions in any given year.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Councillor Richardson?
Thanks, Provost. And you probably just answered some of that there, Lisa. But yeah, I was just wondering if there was any identified reasons why wards 1 and ward 9 have had such low occupancy rates over a period of time. And I know things can vary from year to year and things may change in 5 years' time, but over that period of time, there seems to be a consistent lower, more so in ward 1, but ward 9's getting there a bit as well.
So there's no reason that we can identify it's linked to population in those areas. It's linked to the admissions in those areas. It can vary year to year. When we talk about new admissions each year, councillor, we talk about the number of 3-year-olds then that are coming into the setting. There already are children who are already receiving early learning and childcare who are 4-year-olds and deferred entry children. So there's no obvious reason that would point to us that there's something there that we need to be concerned about or needs to be addressed. It is possibly the case that in Ward 1 there's more rural type settings maybe located, but certainly there's nothing there that would be in our sense alarming or that we would need to intervene around.
I suppose it's quite reassuring within your answer there, and obviously within Ward 1 and Ward 9 there is quite a lot of identifying buildings work over the next few years, so glad that there will be capacity for years to come. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Richardson. We'll go to Councillor McCabe, then we'll go to Deputy Provost Balfour.
Thank you, Provost. Thank you, Lisa. You may have answered the question already, but it's following up on Councillor Richardson's thrust of his question. Can you advise me, are there capacity targets set, or are there the admissions into the early learning centres and nurseries, are they entirely demand-led?
Thanks for the question, Councillor McCabe. Targets, no. Not as such. So we, for each establishment, we have a capacity that is understood, and either that capacity is driven by the physical capacity of the establishment, or it's driven by the staffed capacity of the establishment. And that, in some sense, would determine what the maxima intake would be for any given establishment. So we would treat that as the number of children that could go to that establishment, and we don't really regard it as a target as such, but we would treat that in terms of what we would say is the maxima that in terms of the intake that could be allowed in any given year. In terms of just drawing, I suppose, members back to that that information about the first choice placement, it's just to underline that in Falkirk we do extremely well in meeting parental demand. Our ability to give the first choice allocation to parents is extremely high, and that should reflect some assurance that we have sufficient capacity of the places that parents want their children to receive early learning and childcare.
Again, I think you've answered the question, Lisa. I was just a wee bit concerned when I looked at table 2 to see that, and I'm getting a wee bit parochial here, but within Ward 3 we had the highest admissions. The highest admissions, and we had the highest number of those admissions. It was just I think the fact that you've suggested that you are identifying that, the parents looking for proximity to home is one of the principal considerations for their choice of nursery, whatever. That we appear to, you don't feel anywhere within the system then that we have a lack of capacity. You've not identified anything anywhere, no?
That is something that we monitor really, really carefully. It can be that year on year there are individual establishments that what we would call are pressured, where there are more applications than capacity that is available in any one year. Now, to some extent, deferred entries have played a bit into that, because deferred entry legislation changed in 2018, which meant that any child who was born between August and February could automatically, if you like, continue in early learning and childcare. So those numbers can fluctuate quite a wee bit, and where they do fluctuate, it can leave a reduced capacity for new children to come in. However, we don't have very many examples of that. We're always quite keen to flex where we can. So where we are able to increase capacity by putting extra staff in, then we're able to do that, where it is efficient to do that. So where there are examples of pressures in the system, we know that fairly early on, and would flex our resources to make sure that it's not a problem for parents.
Smashing, Lisa. Thank you very much. Thank you, Provost.
Thanks, Councillor McCabe. The Deputy Provost Balfour.
Thanks, Provost. Just following on from that, what would happen and what contingency plans are in place if one of the buildings suddenly becomes unusable, like a massive flood, or power goes off, or the roof blows off, or something like that? What would happen in that case?
Thanks for that question, Deputy Provost. So we have actually had some experience of this for various reasons. Each establishment does have its own business continuity plan, and in that plan it would set out where, if there was a need to, where children could be decanted to. We also at the centre hold information such as that before you, which is about capacity and availability, where we might need to flex, as we would call it, and by that I mean by putting in additional staffing to an establishment where we can bring it up to its physical capacity, and we have had examples where we have had to do that. In such cases, we would just inform the Care Inspectorate, which are the regulatory body, that we have had to do that under an emergency set of circumstances, and that is always permissible when there are such as the things that you would describe there. It is about knowing our estate really well, and I think the information that we hold gives us an ability to do just that. Our capacity figures show where there is existing capacity and where we could flex capacity where we need to.
Right, so there is contingency in place if the building was to, or a building was suddenly to become unsafe. There's somewhere for the kids and staff to go.
There is, yes. We have had cases, and this would likely to be the case, where a whole establishment wouldn't be able to necessarily be accommodated in one other establishment. So we would look to split the children up, and there are various ways that as an education service we would guide our staff to be able to do that. But over the estate, we would be able to comfortably house any establishment that would not be able to operate.
Okay, that's very reassuring. Thanks for that. Thanks, Provost.
Thanks, Deputy Provost. Councillor Aitchison, did you have another question?
Yeah, thanks, Provost. It's a very quick and easy answer question. You'll be glad to hear, Lisa. If a child, or if there is no available nursery or ELC place, say in Ward 4 where the child resides, are they able to access a ELC or nursery in Ward 9, perhaps, if that was suitable?
Yes, the short answer to that, Councillor Aitchison, is yes, they would, but our ward capacity is sufficient to be able to accommodate all children who live within that ward. But we do have parents that choose to go into somewhere else, and we would always look to accommodate that as best we can.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, just a quick question. I know this is about sufficiency, but is the budget now baselined for ELCs? You know, it used to be ring fence, but is it now baselined in our budget?
It's no longer ring fenced, Provost. So that means that we have some flexibility within the budget in terms of council priorities and education service priorities. So the ring fencing, I think, disappeared 18 months, 2 years ago, probably for ELC.
Just out of curiosity, how many staff did the ELC employ? Because clearly they weren't there before. But I'm just interested to know how many staff we've sort of taken on because of the ELCs giving people jobs.
There's a question. I don't have that right to my hand, but I can certainly provide that to members. The expansion pretty doubled the workforce. Wow. You know, it's nearly 1,000, but the composition of the workforce is made up of various levels. But I can certainly provide a breakdown of numbers if that would be helpful.
Just curious because it's a career for people, isn't it? So doing a good job. So another question is, it's no sufficiency again, but I've asked this before about how do you sort of measure success and how it's helping the lives of these kids, and is it improving before they go to the primary school? Is it really improving, helping them a lot? Is it? I know it's no sufficiency, but I thought I'd just ask that.
I appreciate the question. I thank you for the question. It's a complex thing to measure. You know, success attainment of very young children, achievement of very young children is based on lots of different things, and of course the family unit and early family experiences are obviously crucial to that. One of the key measures that we do look at and is relevant to what you have before you is the uptake. So that is the number of children that come into early learning and childcare. There's a strong correlation by the level of value that families place on what early learning, high quality early learning and childcare can do for their children. And we see very high uptake levels in Falkirk, which is very, very pleasing. In terms of all of our early intervention work, so particularly some of the work that I've described for 2-year-olds, so provision for 2-year-olds is not universal. There are only some 2-year-olds that are eligible for early learning and childcare. So that really early intervention is very, very strong in Falkirk. And we have been asked to share much of the work that we are doing with other local authorities in terms of how we maintain that and how we resource that very effectively. We also have lots of examples of language development work that we do. So part of our, a core part of our professional learning for our staff is around early language development, because it is often a key indicator of later success. And we work very well with our partner agencies around making sure that that is very rich when children have these early learning and childcare experiences. So all of that together, I think represents that we do really some excellent work in trying to make sure that we give our youngest children the best start to their education and start to their life more holistically.
It must be good for the kids, because rather than 5-year-old and getting a wee visit to the school to kind of transition you, you're actually at the school. You know, the ELCs are at the school, so you're actually there. So you're familiar with the school, so it can be as harrowing, if you like, if that's the right word, when you've actually got to go to the school. So that must help in many ways. So let's go back to recommendations. Councillor Meikle-John's away, so she can't make any comment. I didn't mean that in a bad way. Right. Okay, so the report's just for noting, so can we just note the report?
Agreed.
Thank you. So once again, thank you for that excellent information on our ELCs. Very, very important that we're up to speed and we know what's going on. I think they have made a significant difference since they came along to all the families. You speak to families and it's a great thing for them, and it can only be beneficial for the education of our kids for the future. So thank you very much for coming along. Thank you. And that's the last item on the agenda. Thank you for your attendance.
Thanks, Provost.